11:17 is the time here in the WHIP studio. Zach Gelb here with you. This little U2 beautiful day. That's because it is a beautiful day here at Temple University. The Temple football Owls are 2-0. What a start to the 2015 NCAA football season. Owls take down Penn State for the first time in 74 years. And then they beat Cincinnati in their house by a score of 34-26. And the man that was on the call for ESPN in that Temple win over Cincinnati was our good friend Eamon McAnaney, who joins us right now. Eamon, Zach Gelb here. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. It's always fun to talk to you. I made this statement at the beginning of the show today that win up against Cincinnati was bigger and more important for this Temple football team than a week ago up against Penn State, where they took down the Nittany Lions for the first time in 74 years. Would you agree with that?
A more important football win, but I don't know about it validates the Penn State win, that's for sure. They needed that to validate the Penn State win so that everyone in Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania didn't call it a fluke. But I think, and you know that area much better than I do, but I think if you're Matt Rule and you're going around New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania trying to recruit kids, I think it was more of an eye-opening win over Penn State. I think pure football-wise, I get your point, but for a program that's trying to take the next step and sort of validate itself, I think it was the Penn State win.
Because the reason why I say that is, yeah, obviously when you go inside Penn State and New Jersey, just knowing the brand of that Penn State team and beating them, you could say, hey, we beat Penn State. That's why you should come here. You get big-time football games. But just for me, when I take a look at what you saw on Saturday, last year that football team would have a letdown, and you know it better than anybody. They beat Vanderbilt, then lose to Navy. This year, when you take a look at it, they didn't have that letdown, and to me, that win just sends a statement to the American Athletic Conference that this is the Owls conference to win, and many people thought before the year that, hey, it was going to be Cincinnati's conference to win.
There is no doubt about that. I know Cincinnati was the overwhelming favorite to win the East and probably win the American overall. But even Tommy Tuberville told us last week, he's like, hey, this is Temple's year. This is what they've been building towards. This is, they might have a drop-off when a bunch of these kids graduate, but this is what they have, and this is what they've been building towards. So maybe the media, and the pundits weren't aware of it, but even in the American Athletic Conference, the coaches knew what Matt Rule's been building over the last couple of years.
We all know that the foundation of this Temple football team is their defense. We saw it last year when the offense was struggling, and this defense won them 6 games last year. Could have and should have been more. But this defense, they did allow a lot of yards up against a really good quarterback in Gunnar Kiel on Saturday. However, they forced the ball turnovers, 4 interceptions and a fumble, and there probably should have been one more fumble. I don't know what the refs were looking at. But what made this Temple defense so successful on Saturday in coming to the department of forcing turnovers?
Yeah, the amazing thing was it was a completely different game plan than the one they used the week before against Hackenberg and Penn State, where they just knew they could get to him, and they went after him like sharks after blood, and they got to him 10 times. This was more of a bend but don't break. They were multiple in their coverages, and obviously they confused Gunnar Kiel. The 2 interceptions he threw to Alex Wells, obviously he never saw them. Now, you want to say they were bad throws, but I think the fact that they were able to be multiple in their coverages paid off in a big way because Kiel did not see all the defensive backs, and he had all day. It wasn't like he was forced into bad throws. I just think he was confused a little bit. And then the 2 tip drill interceptions was just great hustle by Tyler Matakevich after very good man coverage by the defensive backs.
It was just so fitting that Tyler caught that football at the end of the game to make the interception and seal the victory for Temple. And I said it last week, I'll say it again. Every time I look at Tyler Matakevich, I just think of 3 letters, and that's NFL, Eamon.
I have to. I mean, he's done it. I mean, it's not a Power 5 conference, but he's done it for 4 years, and he's done it against good teams. He's gotten bigger. He's gotten stronger. He's playing a different position now, so he knows the game well. I mean, I don't know how he's going to jump off at the charts at the Combine in Indianapolis. I don't know that much about him, but I know certainly when you watch him on tape, he just is a football player. I mean, he gets there. He has a nose for the ball, and it's just amazing, that he wasn't even recruited by the University of Connecticut. And it's not just 4 years later or 5 years later saying that. I mean, he's been making plays since a freshman.
That's also why I hate the NFL Combine. Sometimes you just got to have to watch the game tape because Matakevich, in his career at Temple University, he's on pace to be 1 out of 7 players in the history of the NCAA when it comes to football to have at least 100 tackles or more in each year at his university. He's closing in on 400, and you're right, he's such an assiduous player. He always makes the right play. He may not be the biggest or strongest player on the field, but he's just a football player, and he's the ultimate gamer when you take a look at Tyler Matakevich. You do a lot of national games. You're all over the place throughout the course of the season. How is he perceived nationally?
Yeah, I think everyone respects his game. I think they have to because, I think unfortunately, I don't know nationally how many people are dialed into Temple, but I think within the Americans, certainly everyone knows about him. And, I'm not a draft guru, but I'm certainly sure he'll hear his name called, if not the first day, the second day. But I think everyone, as you mentioned, his production. That is, you can't fake that. That's not one game where you blow up your stats. That's every game.
Eamon McAnaney is kind enough to give us a few minutes right now. WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Temple with the big 34-26 win over Cincinnati. They start their football season off to the start of 2-0 for the first time since 2011. Eamon, let's shift over to the offense. Jihad Thomas so far on the year is 55 attempts for 328 yards. On Saturday, he was one of the best players on the field with 26 attempts for 193. And let's not forget about that big kickoff return to start the second half dominance. 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. Last year in training camp, he was playing defense, and P.J. Walker won a state championship with Jihad, said, hey, Coach Satterfield, Coach Rule, let's bring this guy over to the offensive side of the ball, and they did. No one, though, could have expected this kind of results from Jihad Thomas. You've done a lot of Temple games in the past. What improvements have you seen out of him?
I just think he runs with conviction. He knows where he wants to go as soon as he gets the ball. There is no dancing or tiptoeing. And in both games, the one I called and the one I watched on tape, the confidence seems to emerge, or he wears down, and wears down the defense and is a much better runner in the second half than he is in the first half. And you have to give the offensive line credit too, because he's getting holes to hit where he's running at full speed right off the bat. But there was, as I mentioned on the call, he took that kickoff return about 3 yards deep into the end zone, and the first words out of my mouth were, will it be a mistake? And he blew by the 25-yard line and then some. And I understand that's not the same thing as taking a pitch and running, trying to turn the corner. But he just runs hard, and he makes up his mind and goes full tilt 100%.
This Temple offense, they've improved from last year through these first 2 games. 27 points up against Penn State, and then you have the big 34 performance on Saturday night. And, yes, we know the foundation of this team is on the defensive side of the ball, Eamon. However, this offense, I don't think it is really a complex system, and I think a lot of it is cliche, but their 3 keys, and you've seen it through these first 2 games, are 1, win the battle in the trenches with the big boys, 2, establish a run with Jihad, and then number 3, this is the most important one, P.J. Walker turned over the football last year. He's not doing that so far through these first 2 games, and they've been limiting his throws to about 20 throws a game. I just think that's a foundation and the formula that we're going to see for the rest of the year from Temple.
Well, that's why getting away from the spread and back to a huddle-up, pro-style offense relying on the running game is so important for P.J. The game slows down for him. They're not asking him to do as much. You're throwing in better throwing situations. It's all the cliches you've heard about, the balance. But that's what it is. When you go spread and you go fast, it's all on the quarterback. And I'm not saying P.J. Walker can't handle it, but it's just a lot. When you line it up and you're in a huddle and you look your teammates in the eye and, you're throwing on 3rd and 2 instead of 3rd and 8, those are ideal situations for him, and you can certainly tell that he's a lot more comfortable in this offense than he was in the spread no huddle last year.
They're starting to get that national recognition. In the AP poll, they jumped up to 26, so they're 1 out of the top 25 slot. How much longer do you think it's going to take for Temple to get in that top 25?
Well, their next 2 wins, if I can give them that, probably won't help them too much. But, I saw someone, Matt Fortuno, who covers the ACC and Notre Dame for ESPN.com, says they roll into Notre Dame 7-0. So the 3 games after Charlotte and UMass, probably off your head better than I do. But you get to 7-0 with Notre Dame coming to the link. I think the pollsters will find a way to make that a top 20 showdown if Notre Dame's still standing. They're running out of guys, so I don't know what Notre Dame's going to be ranked going in there. But get the Owls to 7-0, and I think they'll be ranked.
I agree. Yeah, that UMass, then the bye week. Then they're at Charlotte, home against Tulane for homecoming, home again for UCF, at East Carolina, and then they welcome in the big bad Notre Dame. That's, as you said, have been decimated with injuries. And
you got two tough ones there. Sorry for interrupting, but I mean I know UCF is 0-2, but it's still UCF, and East Carolina gave Florida all it could handle. So I don't want to put those in the win column, but 4-0, and then you get to 3-0 in the AAC. I think you'll be ranked.
Yeah, my expectation is to be 7-0 going to that Notre Dame game. Real quickly, Eamon, right before we let you run, this was a football team that was up 34-12 at one point in this game, and the score was a lot closer than what we saw on the field. So you got to give credit to Cincinnati for never quitting in this game, even though their fans left it. You guys have covered that on the TV front. But just real quickly, Matt Rule after the game said they still got to make some adjustments. You know, they're happy to get the win, but they could still be better. You watched Temple for a few years. What adjustments can Temple make leading up to their next game up against UMass?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is clock management. I mean, they burned timeouts in both halves that they probably shouldn't have. I mean, I understand you want to huddle up, but you don't need to sit in there and order lunch or order pizza. And, you know, they're coming out of the huddle with 5 seconds left on the play clock. They were going to run the game out. I mean, Jahad Thomas fumbled. It was a great strip, but he was about to get the first down. So Cincinnati got a life that probably no one expected. But, look, I don't want to talk for Matt Rule. I like him a lot. He's a very good coach, and he's a great run. But, you know, he probably tried to put that one in the cooler a little too early. I mean, it's why coaches make the big bucks. What do? Do you want to throw it around the yard and keep going, or do you want to try to put it in the cooler and ice it? You know, they kept Cincinnati around by going conservative, I think. But the main thing to your question about the adjustments is just have better clock management, because you can't burn timeouts like that left and right and not have it burn you sooner or later.
And we know about that in the history of Philadelphia with Andy Reid burning a lot of timeouts.
Okay.
You don't want to touch that one. All right, Eamon McAnaney, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Great call on Saturday.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Always fun to be on.
There is Eamon McAnaney joining us on the hotline, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Always good to talk to him. And I remember growing up watching Eamon McAnaney in New York on SNY, and now he's big time on ESPN. So time in the WHIP studios is 11:30. What we'll do right now is we'll take a quick break. Look at that, 30 straight minutes of Temple football talk. And the Birds play tonight. This is a Temple football team that's making some big noise. When we get back, yes, Eagles fans, we got to talk about the EAGLES Eagles. Zach Gelb here with you, flying solo, 11:29. We'll take a quick break and be right back.